Yeah, I love it. Love the energy. Thanks, Ben. Um, thanks to Ben and the front guys. I just want to tell them how awesome this is. I know everyone here. I'm sure you've all been here multiple times. It's such a great community to be a part of, and I'm excited to be here. So today I'm talking about innovation versus execution, specifically about how to turn a product vision into a reality. It's something that we as product leaders, UX, UI, design, even engineering leaders can sometimes struggle with. And it can feel very nebulous, a very difficult and again, nebulous thing to try to put your hands on and move a product across the finish line. So first, a little bit about me. I'm a Utah guy, born and raised. I believe that, if you know me personally, I often say I was destined to be in software and even more specifically in product management. My upbringing, I was raised by a single mom, very, very frankly nebulous upbringing, a lot of opportunity, let's call it, to figure out what I wanted in life. And very early on, I found kind of a North Star that I latched onto really tightly. I feel very, very passionate about specifically our Utah software community, Utah tech community, and some of the amazing early wins like Omniture and the Adobe acquisition and that helped kind of blossom our community here. That helped kind of build my North Star. And that concept of a North Star in product and how that can help us to deliver products and to execute a product vision is I really believe is central to my belief and central to how we can accomplish that as product leaders. So my journey to product started when I was about 15. Like I said, I got some early exposure to Omniture, and for those who don't know, it was a web analytics platform. One of the earliest web analytics platforms was purchased by Adobe, and that's kind of what helped to really move Utah tech forward. Because of those experiences, rubbing shoulders with some of those guys, I said I have to learn more about software. I have to learn more about tech. So I always say I went to Google University and just started Googling things and learning things. And I became a self-taught software engineer back when PHP was in its heyday, if anybody can resonate with that. Yeah, I love it. It's still awesome in my opinion. But and that was kind of my first foray into tech. I got a job at about 16, 17, working in coding. I kind of say I got paid $20 an hour to learn to code. And it was just an amazing experience. From there, I started to transition more into a project lead. This is kind of my early 20s. In my early 20s, I started to build some rapport with executive teams and started to move more into a project lead, more of a front-end dev, some design aspects, but really kind of helping to coordinate teams. And I kind of call that my first foray into product. And during that experience is where I really was exposed to some of the challenges that I'm talking about today. So I almost named this talk Innovation and Execution versus Me. Because it feels like that's my career story. Innovation and execution, they can live adjacent to each other, but more often than not feels like they live against each other. And it's very, very difficult to have both live in harmony. Innovation, we as product leaders, as engineers, as designers, our natural tendency is to innovate. Frankly, I believe as human beings, our natural tendency is to innovate. We're trying to push boundaries and find new ways of accomplishing things, new, better ways of accomplishing things. AI, obviously, is a big topic right now, and it's a great example of that. We're pushing the boundaries. But even AI right now, it feels extremely nebulous, right? There's tons of teams working on ways on how to execute AI at the enterprise level in different businesses. And my experiences with innovation and execution haven't been any different than that. It's been very pushing boundaries, only to fall short on the execution and having to learn from those experiences and how to take the right amount of steps instead of leaps forward sometimes. And I'll talk more about that. This is a meme I wanted to share. This is my attempt at making a meme. This is how I often feel as a product leader. I'll find some amazing innovation. I'll build it with a team. We'll release it. We'll do the validation, the discovery, build it with a team and release it. And I am so proud of my innovation. Just couldn't be more proud. Only to have a giant bear of execution barreling down on me and just completely making the innovation fall flat or feeling like it does. So what is innovation? I want to define this term. So it's the introduction of something new, There's a quote here from Catherine Coate of the Harvard Business Review. It says, product innovation is the process of creating a new product or improving an existing one to meet customers' needs in a novel way. It sounds amazing, right? That's the dream. I mean, I think any one of us here would say, if I could build something that will allow customers to accomplish some end goal, some end value in a novel way, I think we'd have successful careers. A quote by Marty Kagan kind of says it really well. If your business is driven by innovation, command and control management is the antithesis of what we want and need. Many of you likely know Marty Kagan. It's a really interesting quote, right? Because it kind of denotes that innovation is a creative, it's an open, it's a free form. And so command and control management is the opposite of what we need. Yet, we all operate in a real world. We all have to execute. We have jobs, we have deadlines, we have timelines, we have customers waiting on things. People have already pre-purchased or purchased things that we're trying to deliver. It's a very, very difficult balance to strike. So on the other hand, we have execution. Execution is defined here, so that's the carrying out of a plan. Product execution is that period of time between the point when we have a defined product to the point we launch it. And that's Jonathan Orwell. That's a publication called The Startup. And I missed this, but I wanted to mention, so the iPhone is one of my favorite examples of innovation. It's an incredible product, and obviously, as many know, and obviously has extremely wide adoption. But yet, when the iPhone was launched, it had a few issues on the execution side, and maybe even today, right, we see some. But the most common example is the copy-paste issue, right? You couldn't copy and paste anything on the initial iPhone. And there were more, but that's maybe the best well-known one. So on the execution side, that was just something they could not include in their initial scope. There's actually, you can read more about this, but they had tried to, so it wasn't something they could accomplish, so they just shipped, which is a great, bias towards action is an amazing thing, but they had to sacrifice some execution. So you can see that balance, that give and take. The example of execution here that I included is Excel. I'm in Excel every single day. Many of you may be as well. And while I don't feel, my personal opinion, no one, be too offended about this, but my personal opinion is it's not the most amazingly maybe innovative product or well-designed or anything like that, but it is an extremely well-executed product. It's thorough, it has a full feature set. I don't ever find myself wishing it could do things that it can't. So those are two products, and Microsoft and Apple, you can see how they sit side by side as well. So this quote says, a lot is being written about product discovery, planning, and post-launch. The never-ending quest after the holy grail of product market fit, has brought a lot of advice and input on how to get the right features and how to measure success. It seems like somewhere along the way we forgot how important execution is. You can have an idea for a killer product, it won't mean much if you can't actually get it to users. So I don't know if anyone has had that experience. At Cartograph, my company, we started about 4 years ago, and that's kind of our story. We initially built something extremely innovative. We had this kind of NORTHSTAR vision that we were trying to accomplish, and we've never, ever veered from it. But our execution has circled that NORTHSTAR vision quite a few times. We've tried to innovate in one way only to find customers didn't want to adopt it that way. Innovate in another way only to find it likely wasn't really technically possible with what we were trying to do. So it's a very difficult challenge to actually bring an innovation to market. One great example of this is Quibi. I don't know if anyone knows Quibi. And I just want to say before I do this, kudos to any team that goes out and tries to do something amazing. Innovation is really, really what we're here to do. So I don't mean to tear this team down, but it's a great example, a very well-publicized example of innovation gone a little bit wrong. So Quibi, the story is that they had the idea to build basically a Netflix specific to your phone. Short-form clips, vertical video. They thought Gen Z, was their big thing. They thought Gen Z was going to love it, adopt it, and they were going to take over the world. Jeffrey Katzenberg, very well-accomplished person, said, "I think it's the biggest idea we've ever done. I just know it's going to work." They raised, I think it was something over $2 billion, had a very, very high burn rate. And this quote was just before launch. And then 6 months into launch, this article from Wall Street Journal came out, and they shut down 6 months after going live. Users just didn't adopt it. Their execution was off. And that speaks to some of my points around execution It's not just an engineering problem. It's not just a product problem. It can be anything from validation through, writing code. So you can kind of see this theme starting to take shape. Value delivery pipeline or value delivery spiral? Which one are you building in your organization or in your process? We all have this desire to build a value delivery pipeline. Obviously, it's something we want to work with engineering on. We want to work with design on, with executive teams, sales. Right? The dream is to have a very, very cohesive value delivery pipeline where we continue to innovate, validate, bring products to market to customers, build more value. However, oftentimes the attempts to build our value delivery pipeline can turn into a value delivery spiral. And what I mean by this is when you validate something with your customers, you're working maybe in conjunction with your sales and marketing teams, your CS teams. Often you can say, okay, we have a pretty good picture of what we want to build for the customer. This customer is already ready to kind of sign up for that next release or that next product, that next feature. And you go to basically put it through your pipeline, and somewhere along the way, whether it's in implementation, architecture, design, compromises get made, right? You have your architecture team that says, hey, this is how we do things, this is how we're built, we can probably accomplish 85%. You have maybe a design system that says, yeah, we can kind of push a square peg through a round hole here and make this work, et cetera, and compromises get made. And it can sometimes turn into a value delivery spiral in the sense that you as the product owner, right, can sometimes say, okay, I was very, very excited about this innovation. We tried to take it to market. By the time it actually gets to market, it's completely changed from the initial NORTHSTAR vision and the thing that the customer expected, which inevitably leads to, sometimes very, very poor reception by customers, sometimes even a very negative reception by customers. So I want to dive into some of the biggest major challenges I see with the execution side, right? Once we innovate, how do we then execute and bring those things to market? So I kind of view it in threefold questions that need to be answered. The first is, should it be delivered, right? And this is the question that I believe most product professionals are very good at answering. It's the value question. It's, with customers, is this something that you need? Is it something that you want? How much value is this going to create for you? The second question is where we start to see some challenges in the execution side. It's, can it be delivered, right? This is feasibility. Can we actually do this? Do we have capacity? What is architecture saying, et cetera? And finally, how will it be delivered? Implementation. This is the design aspects, the actual coding, how do we put this into our product? How do we create a new feature? Where will it live, et cetera? So diving into those, challenge number one, the value challenge. Should it be delivered? So the three main things that I try to answer to figure out if the value is worth it, basically to set my priority and to make sure we have our feature list set correctly or our roadmap set correctly. I ask the question, how much value is this bringing to our customer base, right? Not only on a per customer basis, but also, frankly, working with my sales team to say, okay, if we go to market with this, what percentage do we believe will actually purchase this product, this feature, et cetera? We'll adopt it maybe, and really trying to understand how much value are we actually creating. We may have one customer that is over the moon about it, but if 99% of our other customers aren't, it's tough to really argue that has real value, real merit to live on our roadmap. Does this fit our focus area? So that's another great thing, especially larger organizations, product owners, right? They have specific focus areas. And if it doesn't really fit your focus area, and this leads into my next question, then it's very difficult to take a giant leap forward, right, in innovation. One example of this at Cartograph is, and I have an image, I'll show it here in a minute, but is 5 years ago, I tried to do the Magic Link login, and this was back when I was our engineer, I was building, and I tried to only have you input your email when you go to log in, and that was it. It sends you a link, you click it, and you log in, no passwords. And we got such poor adoption. We had people signing up, paying us, and everyone said, I can't log in, your whole thing is broken. And I thought it was the coolest way to log in ever. But what I found is that it was way too much of a giant leap forward, right? At least for our users, the people we were working with, it was too much of a leap forward. And what I need to do is take a step forward, right? To step in that direction, to innovate, right? So if we say, here's our NORTHSTAR, our innovative NORTHSTAR, let's take a step towards that NORTHSTAR instead of trying to take giant leaps and bring our users along, help tell the story along the way with them. Challenge number two, feasibility. So can it be delivered? This is kind of my specific area of expertise with some of my engineering background. So does our architecture support this? That is such a massive question. It's the root, in my opinion, it's the root of a lot of the pushback we get from engineering sometimes when trying to implement new things. Engineering will often kind of default to, I don't know if our architecture can support that. I don't know if we can accomplish that. The level of effort it's connected and similar, right? How much effort will this take for the engineering team? Are we communicating priority to them? Are they part of those customer conversations to know that the level of effort required is worth it for our customers? And then do we have the capacity to handle this? That's just a massive one, and it's really at the root of many of the pushback conversations and the questions that we hear. And then finally, challenge number 3, implementation. So how will it be delivered? How does the customer want to create and receive this value? Do we have the design system to handle this new innovation? And do we have all the information we need to move forward? And by that I mean, do we have all the information from all the teams that will work on this? Have we collected the necessary information from the customer? Are we ready to then go into planning mode? So the biggest thing I found to solve some of these challenges, and before I dive in, the biggest thing I've found, I just want to say, is setting expectations correctly really solves 95% of our challenges in execution. Our engineering teams are amazing, and almost always true. I know that that's a sweeping statement, but I found that to almost always be true. And I didn't always believe that, and that's why I learned that lesson, right? And our engineering teams, if they're in the seat, they're likely very good at their job. And same with the sales team, right? The problem is that when we set expectations incorrectly, unknowingly incorrectly, it can set the entire team up, the entire value delivery pipeline up for failure, right? So for example, if I come to an engineer and say, hey, how long do you think this will take? Here's the scope, we've done all this work that I just kind of outlined. And they say, I could probably do that in 2 weeks, right? Just throwing it out there. We are completely setting ourselves up for failure if we just communicate that forward, if we accept that from the engineer and don't do any further discovery or understanding with the engineer. And the reason for that is that engineers are great at estimation. They're really great at it. However, engineers are not always aware of everything in the dev pipeline. They're not always aware of the total capacity of the team, the ebbs and flows of capacity. They're not always aware of their own actual capacity. They have just as much as you going on, maybe more sometimes. Often, probably more. So these conversations, they're started with false pretenses. And so coming back, setting those expectations correctly, meaning doing some more work, digging further with your engineering team to really understand, hey, what do we think? Let's look at the big picture. Let's understand broad strokes. Scrum, Agile, those are really important things to take those bite-sized chunks and deliver to our customers. But in broad strokes, we still need to be able to set timelines with marketing, with sales, et cetera. That's why this execution is so important. So this is where I landed. Delivery is fundamentally a capacity problem. And the reason I say that is because there are many challenges that arise, right, during delivery. But at the end of the day, if we truly understand in a aligned and cohesive environment with our executive teams, our go-to-market teams, our engineering teams, et cetera, if we understand what our capacity, what our actual throughput, what our capability is as a software organization, then we can solve a lot of these execution problems. We know what our capability is. We know exactly what we're able to do. One thing I always think about is building homes, right? It's not often that, people say, oh, we shoot for getting 85% of our homes done, things like that. But you do hear that in software, right? You do hear people say, yeah, if we can get 85% of our roadmap done in a year, we're super happy, or less. It's often less, but anyway, one day you may see a commercial from us with 85% finished homes and asking you if you're happy with that. But anyway, so I want to dive into my little framework. It's very simple, nothing extremely novel, but it's worked very, very well for me. So always return to your North Star. That's the first principle here. As product leadership, that is the guiding principle. And I return back to kind of like, my childhood experiences and some of the things I experienced growing up. I have always, had a passion for software, and it, regardless of where I land in life, I will probably always continue driving towards that North Star. And we need that same passion in product. We need to have passion about our users, solving their problems. Even some of the most mundane things, you can find, excitement and enjoyment in. My I was talking with someone yesterday about product delivery, right? That's the category we operate in, and at Cartograph. And the person was saying, that is the most boring thing I've ever heard in my life. And I was genuinely shocked. I was like, for sure, I get where she's coming from, but I was like, I wake up in the morning just stoked about product delivery. And this is really important for us as product leaders. On this point, I challenge you as a product leader, as a designer, to get to a place where you can be extremely passionate, extremely driven by your North Star, your product, the innovation you're trying to create as a team. The reason why this is so important is because of the roadblocks. And the roadblocks are things that should kill your progress, your innovation. And the only way to overcome these things is with the North Star. A quick example of this is at Cartograph. Over our 4+ years of operating, we have been all these things and more. And this is kind of more of a marketing position, right? We've had a couple of different products, things like that, but all of these were massive dead ends, right? Massive. And all of them came to an abrupt halt where we said, we are wasting our time. We're not getting the adoption we're seeing, or we want to be seeing. We're getting great feedback on our North Star vision when we share it, but this is not the way to execute on it. And what's gotten us to the point we're at today, where we've been able to grow and make a little bit more of an impact, is this. This is our North Star. And our North Star, just as an example, is that there's a chasm, so it's kind of a customer problem statement, but there's a chasm between business leaders and engineering teams due to a lack of ability to align. This results in lost trust, lost revenue, and employee turnover, right? So that's one version of it. We'd have a few different rewordings, but that's our North Star, right? That's kind of my career story since my teens, and it's something that I'm very passionate about solving. That's kept me going. So point number 2 is start by communicating horizontally. I cannot stress how important this is. And what I mean by this is, as a product leader, we often, we're the voice of the customer. You're supposed to be interacting with customers, knowing customer needs, empathizing with customers. If your architecture team or your design team are not having similar experiences, then they're starting at a different start line in the race, right? They're starting at a different place. And it's really an unfair advantage you have on them. Not that it's a competition, but we essentially make it that way if we don't bring them into those conversations and communicate horizontally first. And so I'm just saying here, are we really, check yourself? Are you the voice of the customer or the gatekeeper of the customer, right? That's something really important to always kind of revisit and say, am I bringing others into these conversations when it's important, or am I trying to represent the customer to everyone and kind of keep them in my back pocket? Point number 3 is then collaborate vertically. Like I said earlier, if there's engineers at your organization, other people, other leaders, other individual contributors, they're there for a reason. Trust them. Trust their leadership. Trust their teams. Allow them to collaborate vertically. Present them with problems, and they'll present you with solutions. Engineers will respect you as a product leader, as a designer. I've often found that's an amazing way to work with engineers, and they can be, as Marty Kagan says, a core center of innovation for you. So yeah, trust your teams and your leadership. My last point here is bias to action, kind of like I started with, but at the end of the day, right, Agile and Scrum are great things. I personally love those methodologies. There's many out there, obviously, but bias to action. Act quickly, move with purpose. Act swiftly and iteratively, and really strive towards that North Star. I mentioned this. This was our login, and you put your email in there, and I thought it was amazing. I pulled it up again yesterday. It's actually still live somewhere on the web, and I took a screenshot, and I was like, this is so cool, but no one else thought so whatever. So the last point I just want to make is lean on your data to do this, right? Communicating horizontally, collaborating vertically, all that. There's, in our journey, the epiphany for us was when we said, we all work in software. We all do. And what happens when you work in software? Data gets created. There's data that maps out everything we're doing. And so if we can understand it and measure it, we can improve it. So lean on your data. Don't be afraid to lean on your Jira data, to understand dev process, to work with engineering leadership, to create that cohesive alignment across executives. So just to summarize, Taking a product from vision to reality, always return to your North Star. Start by communicating horizontally. Collaborate vertically and trust those who collaborate vertically, and then bias towards action. Um, and then I just want to wrap up with this quote from Naveen Jain, very, very successful person. Success doesn't necessarily come from breakthrough innovation, but from flawless execution. A great strategy alone won't win a game or a battle. The win comes from basic blocking and tackling. It's those standard things we need to do as leaders, right? To work with others, to strive for innovation, but collaborate endlessly, solve problems together, and ultimately we'll win if we do that. Thank you.
The audience wants to know, what are some ways you've seen your company and clients continue to innovate while being mindful of quality execution?
Oh, such a terrific question. The first thing that comes to mind is that iterative approach. You can be much more mindful of quality if you're biting off smaller chunks, to be frank. It's something we've had to learn. It's very painful to learn that the hard way. A lot of startups, and we're no different, a lot of startups bite off a huge chunk. They try to take a leap, like I talked about. Yeah. And really, we should say, okay, what's existing in the market? How can I take a step beyond that and push the boundary just a little? Increase efficiency or some process for an end user, a customer, just a little. And users see that, they respond to that.
Yeah. Okay. Can you give an example of when you dug deeper to be able to set timelines and expectations? What did that look like? Who did you talk to? What was the outcome? So timelines and expectations.
Absolutely, yeah. My philosophy on timelines and expectations is I'm very specific. You'll notice if you speak with me about this that I never use the word deadline. I don't believe in a deadline, but I do believe in a timeline. And the reason why I make that distinction is you sometimes hear from certain teams, it takes what it takes, right? And that's an okay thing because that's probably true, right? But if it takes what it takes, then we should be able to set some kind of a timeline. We should be able to understand that, measure it, and track it. A deadline, right, saying, we have 2 weeks to get this done, or a quarter, it's got to fit inside a quarter, whatever it is. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, but you do run into trouble when you do that. So coming back to the conversations that I usually try to have, really, I can't stress it enough, working with your architecture team. And in tech, we all, depending on the company, we like to name things different names, but whether it's, your back-end dev who's been there the longest, or maybe a DBA, or maybe it's an architect, whoever it is that really understands how the product was built is the person that I would speak with first and say, hey, we're thinking about going this direction. And most importantly, I would share with them the North Star, right? That communicate horizontally, that's when you get to say, here's our roadmap. Here's what customers are telling me. How would you interpret this? This is how I'm interpreting this. Collaborate that way with those horizontal, partners. And they'll tell you, okay, we're built this way. And as a product owner, you really should strive to understand those technical conversations and dive in a little bit, understand the database you're on, understand how your microservices are set up, etc. It's not difficult to at least understand that framework, that outlay, and then start to imagine how you could build on top of it, right? And understand the similar restrictions that your engineering team might feel. So that's maybe the biggest place. And then to set the timeline, I would just again say, set the timeline with the engineering team. And then lean on your data, right? There's a lot of data we can use to better understand if we're trending towards that timeline or trending away from it. But in lieu of data, having those constant conversations and continuing that collaboration, that's the one thing I didn't say, is continuing that process, right? Return to your North Star, maybe even, maybe it's a once a week thing. Return to your North Star, communicate horizontally, collaborate vertically, and then act and execute.
Yeah, sometimes timelines are forced upon you as well.
Yes, yeah.
In some cases where we're going to run out of money, timeline. Or at Seismic, we actually use event-based timelines. So we have an event that we're presenting to this work. We have to have X, Y, Z done by then. But it is interesting to kind of manage those timelines. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Speaking of the North Star, you talked about personal and product North Stars. If you can find one as time goes on, it seems easy to get distracted or doubt a chosen North Star. What does it take to stick with your North Star personally or in a product?
Oh man, what a great question. What does it take?
What does it take to stick with the North Star as a person or
Maybe
as a
yeah,
product?
yeah. Um, if I could, I would pull up one of those Thanos memes, right, where he says it took everything, right? What did it take? It took everything. Because I often feel that way. And it can take everything. It can feel like it can take everything. But frankly, every time it's felt that way, somehow I've expanded. My wife, is more patient with me. My kids are more willing to not see me a couple nights in a row. Whatever, in-laws, parents, siblings, friends, everybody. Your support group expands to help allow you to do that. So what does it take? It takes your commitment. It's a very cliche, cheesy thing to say, but that's the kind of guy I am. But you're the hero of your own story, and write your story. Um, if that North Star is what you want, then go after it. Even when you're doubting it, don't veer from it. Be willing to do whatever it takes. Um, and yeah.
Yeah, along those lines, like when evaluating feasibility of,
Mhm.
say, even layering in North Star, how often do you find that it makes sense to just wait for the technology to catch up when you evaluate feasibility?
Yeah, that's a terrific question. I mean, I would have some questions around that, but just to answer it directly, um, if it's about something that doesn't exist, right? I wouldn't wait for a time machine to get invented necessarily. If you have some idea around that, but as far as your engineering team and working with them and waiting for them to kind of catch up to where you are, um, to be frank, it sounds like a situation I've been in. That's my own personal experiences. That sounds a lot like my version of the value delivery spiral, right? Constantly waiting. They'll catch up. I trust them. I trust them. I trust them. There does come a time when you have to say, we need to reset expectations, right? And as a leader, it's really on you to take that on and say, what am I doing wrong? Am I expecting too much, right? Do I have too much on their plate? And like I talked about, it's really comes back to capacity. If the technology is not caught up or not where it needs to be, you need to start understanding your capacity, and that's why I say lean on your data. That's the easiest way. That's the easiest thing you can do, or thing you can find out about your engineering team is what's our capacity. And I wanted to say too, you mentioned you have more event-based timelines, right? In that scenario, I would focus more on the capacity side, right? Understanding, okay, if we have a hard timeline, what's our capacity, right? If we can understand our capacity, then we can know about what we can get done before that hard timeline, right? Some people, it's the opposite. It's we don't know our capacity, or it fluctuates, or we bring in contractors, but we're willing to work with our timeline or whatever it is. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, last question. At our company, Fortune 20, a key observation why we miss our on execution is missing the mark on change management. So, how do you see the role of change management in product design or product management or engineering?
Yes, this is one of my favorite topics, and change management specifically in product management. And how I would talk about this specifically, if I understood right, it's a Fortune 20 company, very large company, likely maybe hundreds of engineers, very, very large product and eng org. Um, we have conversations with those type of companies fairly often. And at that size, right, I always joke, right? If you're, I don't know, 15 engineers or 15 in your total product team, and you can kind of get around a table where you can get into a room, you can kind of hash some things out.
Yeah.
If you're 50 or 100 or 500 on your product and engineering team, you can't exactly shout into a room and hear like, March 12th back or something, right? It's not exactly possible. And in that scenario, you have to be data driven. I do not see another way to accomplish not only product delivery, but change management specifically, right? Because part of that product delivery spiral, right, is that we say, okay, here's our plan. We're maybe start a quarter. Here's our quarter plan. Let's go. Let's get this. There's a lot of hype and excitement. 2 weeks in, the plan goes out the window. There's fires everywhere, and we're all sitting around a table. Leadership sitting around a table is trying to say, what's the new plan? And we're pulling engineers off their computers and saying, can you estimate this? Can you estimate that? What would happen if we did this, right? Maybe that's a little dramatic, but you see it time and time again. And so introducing, data and utilizing the data that you have access to when your engineers are doing their work and mapping those processes will help you to understand their capacity, understand the downstream effects of when a plan changes, when priorities shift. And that change management, especially at larger orgs like a Fortune 20, you have to introduce a level of data into your decision making there. But if you do, you can automate a lot of those decisions. You can quickly understand different scenarios and what would happen if we did make decisions without pulling engineers off their work too early or for too much time. You can really be an informed, a data-driven, informed product manager to make those change management decisions.
Yeah, in our scenario, with our strategic area, we have 75 developers within my strategic area. And when it comes to change management, reorgs, we bake in to our seasonal plan what's the change management effect of the execution strategy and timeline based on the ramifications of the change management. And obviously within a 4-month plan, things change within 2 months of like what you just learned. So yeah, it's definitely a challenge for sure to how to handle change management in general.
It is, yeah.
Well, let's give Bentley another round of applause and welcome Mitch to the stage. Thank you.